Hello everyone and welcome to Robertson Wesley Scripture Reflection Hour. My name is Reverend Karen and we're here in Edmonton, Alberta at Robertson Wesley United Church. I'm in the club room for those of you who like to know about spaces. I'm with a group of people who are on Zoom, and if you would ever like to join the Zoom feed, feel free to contact the church office and we'll send that to you. We use a technique called Lectio Divina, where we'll read through one of the two scriptures on Sunday. We'll read through it 3 times, and each time we do, we focus our attention and our reflections in different ways. So to begin with, and please know if you're on live stream that you can add your comments in the comment box as well, and I will definitely share it with the group. We're going to start by creating sacred space. And so if you have an object, a candle, or something in your space that helps you to focus, I invite you to do that now. I'm going to light this candle, remembering that we are walking with Jesus towards Jerusalem as we move into the 5th week of Lent, and that Jesus is teaching us and guiding us. So may this light open us up to the wisdom and the teachings of Jesus. We have a prayer that we like to begin our time together with, and so I'm going to invite us to join together in prayer. Let us pray. God of all creation, we offer you our thanksgiving for a time rich with connections among each other and with you. We thank you for moments when we have experienced what it is to be united, even in our differences. Help us to grow as a listening, discerning, learning people. Help us to give up patterns and structures that enslave us and others. Help us to acknowledge our fear and lean into your hope and your courage. Help us to grow in our trust in each other and in your spirit. Fill us with your grace and with your wisdom, with your patience and with your love. Propel us into your future, rooted in the richness of our past. In Christ we pray. Amen. We are going to reflect on the Gospel of John today, chapter 12, starting at verse 1 and going to verse 8. So that's John
12, 1 to 8.
Yes. 1 to 8. As I read through it this first time, what I want you to focus on is feelings. How does this particular story make you feel? And then in our time of silence afterwards, think about why that might be. So reading from the Gospel of John, chapter 12, starting at verse 1. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, the home of Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. There they gave Jesus a dinner. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those at the table with him. Mary took a pound of costly perfume made of pure nard, anointed Jesus' feet, wiped them with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, the one who was about to betray him, said, "Why was this perfume not sold for 300 denarii and the money given to the poor?" He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief and he kept the common purse and used to steal what was put into it. Jesus said, "Leave her alone. She brought it so that she might keep it for the day of my burial. You always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me." How does this make you feel and why? We'll spend some time in silent reflection and then share with one another. So I've just finished reading through the Gospel of John, chapter 12, verse 1 to 8. This first time through, we were focusing on feelings. So how did this story make you feel, and why do you think that is? And I'm going to open it up to the groups, both online and on Zoom. If you're online, feel free to add your comments in the comment box, and I'll share it with the group. But for those of you who are on Zoom, you were muted. So what feelings were brought up for people?
I had to read it several times over, but I got a feeling of family caring for each other, specific things that they did, and then also picked up a hint of what's to come. You do not always have me.
I was feeling the spirit of generosity.
I felt a little happy because I recognized the names of Mary and Martha. I think that's the same Mary and Martha, about, you know, and playing their roles still, and Lazarus, but a little sad at the foreshadowing of, in Jesus' statement, you will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me.
Yes, I'm kind of curious. Did Lazarus die eventually again, or did he stay alive, or what happened to him?
Well, he sort of disappears from the picture.
Yeah, I didn't.
Well, as with most passages of scripture, I have different feelings. First of all, poor Martha, who's having to do all the serving, and the men sitting at the table. So that makes me a little annoyed. But then Mary, who had greater understanding, is anointing Jesus with myrrh, which is meant for embalming. So she had a premonition of what was going to happen.
Well, Karen, that was nard.
Yeah, but that's myrrh. That's myrrh.
Okay, didn't say that when I looked it up. Thank you.
I bought some myrrh in the form of nard at a perfume shop in Paris.
Oh, lovely.
All right, we're gonna read through this a second time, and the second time through, I want you to let the words just float around in your spirits and see which word or phrase stays with you, and then in our time of silence, we'll consider why that might be. So I'm gonna read from the scripture a second time. It's coming from John chapter 12, verses 1 to 8, and it says, 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, the home of Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. There they gave a dinner for Jesus. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those at the table with Jesus. Mary took a pound of costly perfume made of pure nard, anointed Jesus' feet, and wiped them with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, the one who was about to betray him, said, "Why was this perfume not sold for 300 denarii and the money given to the poor?" He said this because Judas cared about not because Judas cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. Judas kept the common purse and used to steal what was put into it. Jesus said, "Leave her alone. She bought it so that she might keep it for the day of my burial. You always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me. What word or phrase is sticking with you, and why might that be? Spend some time in silent reflection. So we've finished reading the Gospel of John chapter 12, verse 1 to 8 a second time. We're focusing on a word or a phrase that was staying with us, and then considering what it's saying to our spirits and our souls at this time. So what word or phrase caught your attention?
Somehow I want to put these right in I'm back to 7 and 8 again, where Jesus says, "Leave her alone." I see the celebration there, that they're together as family, filled with love and care for each other. That's how I see that.
Mine's somewhat the same. I like 8. The poor will always have you, be with you, but me, ye have not always. And I see that in learning to appreciate the people that you have.
Yeah.
Verse that I took was verse 5 of, why didn't you sell this perfume and give money to the poor? And I think this is an argument that continues to this day about how money was distributed.
I laughed at this as keeper, because I didn't remember this. I took from as keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. And he's the one that protests, yet he's guilty of keeping money from the poor himself. And I was thinking that saying, I think with privilege or power comes responsibility. And I was just looking at myself at times when I got very self-righteous and objected to something, and making a judgment when I could be guilty of the same fault.
I was thinking of that one that Jane was just talking about as golly, that's what's going on left, right, and center today and for centuries. Yeah.
I really wonder about that sentence. Like, it looks like it was imported by somebody else, not you. Mm-hmm.
Definitely an editorial comment for sure.
Yeah.
Caroline, I missed what phrase you were referring to.
The one where it describes Judas as taking some of the money, like keeping the money and then taking a bit for himself. And it's in brackets, and I sort of wondered, like, why is it even there? Yeah, it sounds a later addition to the text.
A secretarial addition.
Yeah. Probably trying to make him look guilty for later. To perpetuate that story later. So yes, because none of the other gospel readers condemn Judas quite the same way as John. But that aside, having heard what we've all said, I want you to keep that in mind and then listen to this again as if for the first time. And this time, really focus on what this scripture is saying to you as a person of faith. Think about how it's speaking to your soul, what message God has for you this day for our time and place. So coming from the Gospel of John, chapter 12, verse 1 to 8, and it says, 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, the home of Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. There they gave a dinner for him. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those at the table with Jesus. Mary took a pound of costly perfume made of pure nard, anointed Jesus' feet, and wiped them with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, the one who was about to betray him, said, "Why was this perfume not sold for 300 denarii and the money given to the poor?" He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. He kept the common purse and used to steal what was put into it. Jesus said, "Leave her alone. She bought it so that she might keep it for the day of my burial. You always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me." What message does this scripture have for us today? We'll spend some time in silent reflection and then we'll share with one another. So we finished reading through this passage a third time, and I'm curious to know what message people were receiving, remembering that part of this practice is about gleaning insight from one another. So I'd love to hear from those of you online as well as those of you who are on Zoom.
Go ahead. I want to hear from others too.
I go back to you won't always have me, and that's just so true of the people in your life, that it's so important to realize that and not take them for granted.
Yeah, for me it means to be present in the moment. There's this group of friends, and they should enjoy each other, and not worry about what is to come.
Oh, that's neat. And I was looking at it from, I don't always have Jesus with me, or at least not consciously, and I need to take the responsibility to work at keeping in touch. And I thought the same with friends in the church. You know, I remember going to a church and sitting in the pew and going, nobody's saying hi. And then it occurred to me, well, why don't you say hi first, Jane? And I mean, it turned things around. So yeah, I can get, and I just like that, just because he's not here physically, you know, he can be in our hearts. But I realize I need to do the work to keep him in my heart. And the same with my friends. Yeah.
I like that, Jane. But in this remark about Judas, he's got the money all just for himself, so he believes, etc., etc. So for me, it's a quiet hint to care well for how I use the funds that I have, how I use it, how I did it. I don't know, I'm not going into stewardship right now, but that just popped into my head. And I just love the way the story is going. I wonder if the disciples are there too. Doesn't name them, but exactly that they gave dinner for Jesus. So whether there would have been others there or not, but whatever it is, I still see it as a caring, loving family situation, celebrating. They might be aware, using that nard, that rough times are coming. And I think Jesus himself clearly understands that on the sixth day there's going to be big stuff going on.
I like what everybody's been saying. What I was thinking about is maybe similar, that there are times when we can choose to be generous and show appreciation to people who are near and dear. And it makes me think back to the father in Prodigal Son parable and the celebration of having the lost found.
Yeah.
Spend some money and eat the fatted calf or whatever is your choice. Actually, The Prodigal Son. Last time Laura mentioned the book by Henri Nouwen, so I got it out of the library and making my way. So I guess it'll be in my mind as well as all the other things for the next little while.
Well, this is the last Sunday before we hit Holy Week with Palm Sunday. So this is one of the last stories we hear of Jesus being with others before moving towards entering Jerusalem for the Passover meal, the Last Supper. So thank you all for sharing what you gleaned in this scripture. We will obviously continue to explore it in more depth on Sunday. Yeah, it's a beautiful piece. I've always appreciated the beauty at the beginning and then the turn. And so the feeling that always sticks with me is just that sense of disappointment with somebody making that judgment after something so beautiful. It's kind of like when you try to create this beautiful sense of calm and peace and then somebody claps. It kind of breaks that moment. And even though they're trying to show appreciation, it can draw us back out of that moment, and sometimes it's out of people's own discomfort that happens. But anyway, that's where my head's at, and I'm excited for Sunday. There'll be a little special presentation, so yeah, you'll have something to look forward to. But why don't we end our time together with the Lord's Prayer, and feel free to speak it in whatever language is most familiar to you. Let's pray. Our Creator, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you to those of you who joined us online, and we'll hopefully see you at 10:30 on Sunday. Okay, bye.